Sorry to have kept you waiting. It was not my fault, you understand. The violence in Ukraine continues unabated. The military campaign by the Ukrainian armed forces in the eastern parts of the country continues to take lives of civilians, members of self-defense forces of the Donetsk and Lugansk regions. They continue to shell vital infrastructure, including power stations and water pumps. Civilians keep dying by dozens. For some reason, they continue to shell Russian Orthodox Church. Today, we had the fourth case of the shelling of a Russian Orthodox Church, even though there were no military facility or military people anywhere in sight. And journalists increasingly are targeted by the Ukrainian armed forces, arrested, harassed, beaten up, tortured. And today we had another case of journalists being targeted by the military, and two Russian journalists were killed, Igor Kornelyuk and Anton Voloshin, two Russian TV journalists. As you know, a few weeks ago, an Italian journalist, Andrea Racchelli, a photojournalist, was killed along with his colleague and interpreter, Andrei Mironov. First of all, I'd like to offer our condolences to the members of the media, to the UN Media Corps, and of course to all Russian journalists. And today we have been able to produce a press statement of the members of the Security Council on the situation with journalists, the killing of journalists, and harassment of journalists in eastern Ukraine, and I'm going to read to you this statement. The members of the Security Council express their deepest condolences to the families of all journalists who have been killed while covering the crisis in Ukraine, including the two Russian journalists killed on June 17 and the Italian photojournalist who was killed on May 24, along with his Russian interpreter. The members of the Security Council encourage a thorough investigation of all incidents of violence involving journalists. The members of the Security Council expressed concern about reported cases of detention and harassment of journalists covering the crisis in Ukraine. The members of the Security Council support the freedom of expression as a human right, including of the media. The members of the Security Council commend journalists around the world for the important role they play and for their commitment to the free exchange of ideas. This has been the text of the press statement which was agreed by the members of the Security Council. Now, please, I'll take your questions.
Also, I wanted to know if there was any pushback on this press statement. I know that on the proposal about the embassy, after yesterday's stakeout, Lithuania has said that they wanted a separate statement about the plane. Is that an accurate
well, that
description?
That is an accurate description of the situation, and in fact, I can tell you very frankly that they've been criticized by other members of the Security Council, because never before, when we had an attack on an embassy, people never before were trying to look for some other issue to be connected with that. Embassies should not be attacked full stop. If there was a need to look into something on the military transport aircraft which was shot down, this is a completely separate issue. We could have started working on this, condemning all violence in eastern Ukraine, etc., etc. So it was completely inappropriate to try to make that linkage. And again, I'm very frankly, many colleagues come up to me and they understand that, they think that it was the wrong thing to do. Now on this, yes, of course, you understand that our draft, even though it was very carefully drafted in a way to be acceptable to all members of the Security Council, it was watered down quite a bit. We would have liked to make it a stronger statement, but I think even this one shows that we do care about journalists, and I hope that all those who mishandle journalists in eastern Ukraine and target journalists, what our journalists with a lot of experience in other conflict areas say, that it's for the first time that they feel they are being targeted by government forces. Never before in various, I mean, if they were pointing out that even during Saddam Hussein times, when Baghdad was being invaded by the U.S. troops, the journalists could operate and no physical problems arose for them from the government. This is not the case apparently now. The arrest, beating, intimidation, and then fortunately in those cases we had with Russian reporters, they were released by Ukrainian authorities. But this is of course an outrage, and of course we in the Russian delegation are disappointed by the language we had to put up with in order to have the Security Council members express their support for journalists, because some members of the council, they like to talk in generalities, but unfortunately when it comes to specific situations, they are very much motivated by their political interests, and this is unfortunate. Please.
Ambassador, you had a meeting today with other council members on your draft Ukrainian resolution. Can you tell us what
we
response
are having
you
a
had?
meeting now. We are having a meeting on level of deputy permanent representatives. We will continue our work. It may well be that tomorrow we'll have a meeting on perm rep level. We think it's a very important draft, and we want to move ahead with that. We want it to be accomplished and voted on as soon as possible. Please.
Ambassador, in just a few hours, the next human rights report, UN human rights report on Ukraine will be published. What are you hoping to see in that report? Well,
first of all, we hope to see an objective picture of the situation in Ukraine, and for us, we are very interested to see what they are going to say about the massacre in Odessa on May 2, because we were assured that the UN is going to follow the situation, follow the investigations, and more than follow, do what they can given their capacity on the ground and their contacts in Ukraine. They will have some added value to the investigation. We'll see what it is going to contain.
Are you aware of any? I've heard that there were some threats to the Russian consulate in Odessa, and also there's some discussion of martial law. Discussion, not being imposed, but possibly being imposed in Donetsk and Lugansk. And what would you think of that?
Well, if the current violence is not enough to have martial law, it sounds like something which is going to produce even more violence. This is not the way to go. This is a very bad start by President Poroshenko. That is not what was expected of him. He had a great opportunity to start from scratch, to offer some gesture, negotiations, talks with the people in eastern Ukraine. Instead, he opted for this military campaign. I don't know what the expectation is, to crush any kind of dissent. This is the worst possible scenario. In fact, some colleagues suggest that it's their feeling that he is not in control of the situation. He is not in control of his own forces. Incidentally, I'm not saying that they are driving the military campaign, but there are repeated reports of the presence of foreign mercenaries speaking English, etc., etc. So it is a very complex situation. It's hard to understand who is in control. If it's President Poroshenko who is in control, then he's doing the wrong thing. Please.
Ambassador, I'm curious why you thought the journalist statement went too far or didn't concentrate on the Russians, because there's a whole list of them from Committee to Protect Journalists on all sides having injured, some are Russians who are anti-Putin. There's a whole variety of terrible acts against journalists.
No, because today, as I explained, 2 Russian journalists were killed, and I called my Italian colleague. I also recalled that there was an Italian photojournalist who was killed. He said, I asked him, do you want us also to include a reference to that in our statement? And we produced the statement. I hope you don't mind. And this is what we're supposed to do.
That the Italians were included. You didn't mind?
No, I made that offer to include. His death was very broadly covered in the Russian media. Among other things, apparently he was a great guy, much liked by everybody. And these people, 37-year-old journalists, this is a shame.
Ambassador, separately on Iraq, if I may, as President of the Council, do you have any plans to call a meeting or another briefing by a Special Representative on the developments there, and when would that be?
I'm thinking about it. So far there's been no initiative. Of course, we're tracking the situation very closely. If there is a need for a meeting, we can do a meeting immediately.
About the situation in Palestine, of course, the Israelis are capturing and arresting so many hundreds of people, in fact, and they are threatening with more
Well, we are going to discuss that on the 24th. The situation, of course, is very disturbing, and I'm expecting the traditional question, even though I cannot answer it in my presidential capacity, about the humanitarian resolution on Syria. I think we are there. I think we are there. We produced, in terms of a text, we produced a formula today, which I hope is going to be accepted by our Western colleagues. It is a far-reaching formula which will allow to open those 4 crossing points in which the humanitarian agencies were interested. So I would very much like to see that resolution to be adopted within days. I'm sorry?
Is there any date that you think it will be adopted?
Well, if they say yes tomorrow, we'll put it in blue. I mean, I'm not the sponsor of this resolution, though, even though we worked very hard to produce this formula, which is now fleshed out in the product, which I believe is the final product, and which they need to accept. Then I suppose they can put it in blue tomorrow, and then we'll vote the day after tomorrow.
Can you elaborate for us any further on this formula, and have you obtained Syrian government consent?
I'd rather wait till the final confirmation. I mean, this way or the other, I'm going to describe it to you, even though they do not. Even if they do not accept it, I'm going to describe it to you. But I think after all the work we have done on this formula, I would be very much surprised that if they don't take it up, because it's an elegant solution to this problem.
The Syrian government has agreed to this formula, to open these 4 crossing points?
I'm sorry?
To open these 4 crossing points?
Yes, they have. Under this formula, they've accepted that. It's a pretty innovative approach to doing things. So we hope it's going to work, and we hope it's going to help the humanitarian agencies to work on the ground in Syria, including in areas which are not controlled by the government. Thank you very much.